Zoom is being utilized for this meeting. In case of technical issues, meetings will be uploaded to the city website as soon as possible after this meeting. We will be conducting today's meeting in a virtual setting using Zoom. Committee members and staff are participating from remote locations, practicing appropriate social distancing. Members of the public may view and listen to the meeting by use of Zoom as noted on the city's website and as noted on the agenda. Members of the public wishing to speak to the Climate Action Committee may do so during public comment or may comment on agenda items during the discussion of each item and must be logged into Zoom. Anyone using abusive, vulgar, offensive, threatening, or harassing language, personal attacks of any kind, or offensive terms that target specific individuals or groups will be muted and removed from the meeting. Please do not abuse this new way to provide public comment. Whew, okay. I'll turn it over to, am I turning it to Phoebe for the roll call?
Yes, I'll be doing a roll call today. So Jerry Glazer.
I'm here.
Alex Goodman.
Here.
Thank you. Dina Allen.
Yes.
Joshua Somane.
Yes, thank you.
Kenna Lee.
I'm here.
Lisa Pierce.
Here.
Thank you. Debbie Burns.
Here.
Thanks. Sonali Sikand. Do not see Sonali here yet.
Sonali and Diana and Ambrosia, I believe, all said they are not going to be able to attend today.
Okay, good to know. Thank you. Woody Hastings.
Here, behind the bushes.
Hi, Woody. Argus Brent. Not here. Ambrosia, not here. Everett Fernandez. Do not see either. And Sarah Gurney.
I'm here. Hi.
It's here. Thank you. And Diana Rich, as noted, is not present. So we have a quorum now.
Thank you. I don't think we actually have any decisions to make today. So Joshua, do you have a review of action items?
Goodness, let me see if I do. Yeah, folks are reminded to check up on the RCPA greenhouse gas report. And there was some fielding of the email list, which Phoebe was going to follow up on, and then just reminders about the work plan meeting on the 9th, and a reminder to everybody that our meeting on the 23rd of November is rescheduled to the 30th of November. That's it.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any comments from members of the public regarding items that are not on our agenda today? I see two of our regular members of the public. Feel free to speak up if you want to. Otherwise, we will move on to statements of conflict of interest. I know this one always gets a lot of attention. Anybody have a statement of conflict of interest? All right, I don't see any. So we'll move straight on to the planning department report.
Thank you, Kenna. Let's see, I will do the non-climate action committee stuff, and Phoebe can chime in with any updates for that. But let's see, last Tuesday, we had the fossil fuel treaty go to City Council. And thank you to Woody for being there as the expert on this. The city did sign on, and actually we're asking if Woody or others, and they may be letting other cities in the county know about it and encouraging them to also sign on through their emergency council group. Let's see, we do have a couple of projects going on of potential interest. The Saves RV Village did apply for a use permit to extend that use for 2 years. That was approved by the Planning Commission, but it has been appealed, and so that will be going to City Council on November 15th. And then next week, there's a couple of minor items from the Planning Commission, or from the Planning Department. One is a request for a fee waiver for the community churches micro shelters That's actually another temporary use permit for residential use. And I believe that's about it. It's a little bit of a breather right now. We have a lot of big projects going on, but that's all I have to report this week.
Phoebe, do you have something for us?
I think all of my updates we're going to cover in the regular agenda, so save
Okay.
until then.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Gurney.
Thank you. Hey, the council is like with the planning commission. We had a bit of a light agenda last time. Carrie mentioned the Woody's issue that passed. We also had a report from what used to be called Map Your Neighborhood, and I think the new name is Meet Your Neighbors. It's turning into a very big neighborhood collaboration building effort and very successful. We also heard an amendment to our ordinance about coin-operated play devices related to fix up a little old thing in our ordinance so that we were up to date, and that would allow the fellow Carrie, I can't think of his name, to put in the rewind in the Barlow.
Right, so we have Adam Lamb as the applicant for the rewind. It's an arcade.
Arcade.
Coin operated play devices, i.e. what we now know as arcades. That's how old the language is. Yeah, and so what he's proposing is a arcade, but allowing beer and cider to be served. That is not allowed in our code right now. The planning commission's already reviewed the use permit and asked a lot of good questions about the combination of the two. But that part of our municipal code needed to be removed. So that's what went to council.
Right, so we fixed it, and it looks like the rewind will go in, and it's a family-friendly business that will be, I think, for adults only, say, I think after 9, because of the alcohol issue. Also, we had a discussion about the council's interest in discussing the official end of the pandemic declared by the governor to be February 28th, 2023, in which case it's very likely meetings will go live and in person. The mayor announced that there was a consensus to go forward and have a discussion about how to do that and what the protocols might be. However, the Agenda Review Committee denied putting on the agenda for this council to hear, is what I believe. So it'll roll to January or February. Our next meeting is likely to be very long, I understand. That's it.
Our next CAC meeting is going to be long, and your next council meeting is also going to be long.
Our next council meeting is likely to be long. We'll see what the agenda is.
All right, thank
And I'm
you.
glad I only have 2 items on consent. The coin op second reading and the microchurch thing.
I've heard a rumor that the report on the options for the fire department is coming to a special meeting November 29th, but that has not been confirmed with me yet.
right.
Right before the new people are sworn in,
Yeah.
December 6th.
All right. Lots of change, lots of change. Thank you guys so much for those reports. I did want to just congratulate and thank Woody for bringing that forward. I don't know if anybody was able to attend that meeting and support Woody. I was not, but I did see 2 days, I think 48 hours later, there was a big article in the New York Times, yes, about European countries calling for a fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty. It was somewhere. So timely.
Yeah, there's growing momentum for it leading up to COP27 in Egypt in November. So there's been some news hits recently, and yes, Europe calling for a vote. They want to get a vote on the floor to move forward on it.
Yeah. So yes, Sarah.
We also suggested to the RCPA that it hear the issue based upon Sebastopol's lead. Woody, Zeno, Joshua, and I sent that in to him.
Great, thank you. All right, so moving on to our regular agenda, we have working group reports in the first slot. A little unusual, so bring it on, Joshua.
Yeah, thanks, Kenna. On the sequestration working group front, we had an interesting meeting the other week in the community garden behind the skate park. We're basically being asked to rescue and revive the community garden. This is coming both from the city in the form of John Jay, kind of the assistant planner, who's the previous City Point person for the community garden has left. And also from the remaining folks who are active in the community garden, which is about 3 at this point. So it's in a place where it's had hard times. It's getting old. It needs a refresh. They're asking us to help rescue and revive it is sort of an easy way to say it. This is potentially a daunting and consuming task, so we're not exactly sure how to take it on, although of course we want to support it in principle and in line with our priorities. So just to say that Dean and I are mulling on that these days and looking to work towards some kind of relaunch, coordinated relaunch effort probably next spring or so. And that's going to require checking in with Public Works and getting some messaging out, perhaps an updated site plan, potentially some publicity and community outreach, et cetera, et cetera. So just kind of in the early stages there, but that's something that's kind of coming up in our work horizon.
Joshua, it looks like there's some questions for you. Do you want to just call on people?
If those are in fact questions on that subject, yeah, happy to take them. Let's see, Steve?
No, it's actually not a question.
Okay, yeah, I assume they were just waiting for other reports.
Okay.
Does
Yeah,
anybody have a question about the community garden?
I do have a question for you.
Okay, yes.
Or not really a question, but just, if you'd like to collaborate, maybe with our working group and instead of us taking it on as a committee, maybe we could find a group of volunteers through the high school or something where we can facilitate the work being done in a more seamless manner for us, since we have a lot to tackle. That's all I want to say.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. Yeah, I think we're definitely looking to be in a place of more like assisting and facilitating at key points and making connections rather than spearheading that thing. Because Dean and I both are not in a position to have like that much extra bandwidth. So thanks for that. Anything else, Carrie, is related?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Joshua and Dina, for going out with John the other week. I can elaborate a little bit more on the history. So this is, so the community garden generally has a garden volunteer who's the coordinator for that. For several years, we had Bill Cole, who also had a son who was part of the original skate park fundraising and initiative. And it was much more seamless, I should say. So a few things kind of compiled. One is we had the 2019 floods. And so there were some people who were concerned about the contamination of the plots. I think that has been kind of dealt with at this point, but I think we did lose some plot holders who were concerned about that. COVID hit in 2020, and then Bill Cole unfortunately passed away during that time frame too. And our admin assistant, who is in charge of coordinating that, has been out on leave. So all of that sort of combined to where it has been a bit ignored by my department. That's my fault. I'll take that. But yeah, we are kind of, I guess, asking for help as the planning department and trying to get people back involved with the community garden. I know that this can be kind of daunting. I think there are a few resources. We do have a new gardener out there who's stepping up to be the coordinator. I think he could certainly use some assistance. My understanding, Joshua, was at that meeting, there was a question from some folks as if they could actually, help do community service or work days for, like, I think some of the skaters who get ticketed for not having helmets on and stuff like that. Could they dedicate community service hours to that? Which I'm going to talk with their police chief about that. I suspect it would be something he would support, though. And, so the city, we do have resources in public works for some of the maintenance stuff like irrigation, but we don't necessarily have the expertise. And so we kind of have some master gardeners in this group and possibly others that you may know with the compost and whatnot. It would be a great help to me and to my department if you, and not necessarily you, 3 people or whatever, but if this group could help with a little bit, get that lifted back up and operating smoothly, whether that's engaging other people or whatever it is. And I'm looking forward to potentially working with you guys on that.
Sure. Sounds good. Carrie, just a quick question back. Is the volunteer coordinator you're referring to, is that Medea or someone else?
Yes, I believe it is. I believe that's a person who recently asked if they could do that.
Okay, great. Thanks.
All right. So I think Woody, I think sequestration, you're finished, Joshua? Okay. I think Woody had his hand up to discuss
I
some.
did, yeah. And Alex, I don't want to steal your thunder, so if you wanted to talk about this, chime in. So Transportation Committee, we're pleased to be requested by the outreach group to write an article for the Sebastopol Times. So we're going to be doing that. It's only 400 words, so we can't do a lot of damage. And we're looking at focusing on bicycles, improvement in bicycle amenities, bicycles writ large. So it could include, regular bicycles, electric bikes, whatnot. Alex, anything to add to that? I think and it's going to be early. It's going to be it come out in November. I think we're submitting it sometime next week. And yeah, so that's in the works.
What do you cover?
I think he said you covered it.
It's kind of what I heard too. A little bit,
Okay.
a little scratchy there, but I heard it.
All right. So is that it from transportation? I'll say yes. So Steve, you had your hand up.
Yeah, a couple of things. One on the funding group, I just have a general question if we've gotten any responses on the request for proposal on the grant writing services. That's one question. And the other, an update from the energy group, there is a pilot project that Sonoma Clean Power is going to be voting on next week.
Hey, Steve,
Yes.
let's get the answer to your first question.
Okay, that's fine.
Before we move on to your second more complex point.
So that's a simple answer because I don't know, but I will check with city admin. It's going through the city manager's office. So
I know.
Go for it.
Oh, I know. We had 3 people respond. And I don't remember the names, but they didn't sound so much like individuals as businesses. If I can find that, Steve, I'll send it on to you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing I wanted to talk about is what appears to be a good opportunity for us to move on. This is Sonoma Clean Power doing a pilot project, voting next week, for employer charging. So we have a real mismatch between when we're producing our power with solar and the amount of people that are out there charging their cars during the day, so we can take advantage of all that solar that's on the grid. So Lisa and I went to a meeting at the West County School, otherwise known as Annalee High School, and brought up that issue and the school bus charging. But we are hoping to move quickly on talking to them about this pilot project, which we didn't know about when we met with them or went to their meeting a couple weeks ago. So we're gathering information. Brant Arthur is the lead at Sonoma Clean Power on this, and they hope to have it up and running in January. So this might be something that we can coordinate with the transportation working group. And if people have personal connections to the high school board staff or the board itself, that would be greatly helpful. Thank you. If anybody wants to add from our group on that, chime in.
Anybody else? Lisa, I see you're not muted.
Yeah, I was looking for my little hand there. Yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up. It is an exciting opportunity. And I just wanted to also add that we're going to be going ahead with the electrification survey, getting that rolling out hopefully really soon. Jerry, did you have anything to add?
Not really. And a lot of this came from our last meeting with Jeff Cyphers and his input about how the grids are working and his frustration on all kinds of things. And the workplace charging. He actually even suggested that we should have a REACH code that says that all workplaces must have charging. And the only thing I want to point out when Steve is bringing up is that integration between what's energy, the grid, and transportation. And we're going to see more and more of that occurring. So we'll have to figure out what the transportation group focuses on and what the energy group focuses on, or whether we pick a topic and then we do joint work on it.
Yeah, I think one of the most exciting things for me that Jeff Cyphers said is that when they installed their workforce charging at Sonoma Clean Power in Santa Rosa, they were able to do it for very low cost because it's not like there's any credit cards attached or anything. It's just a simple system they have to provide a bunch of chargers. And so that's really exciting to me.
Yeah, but the other thing he also mentioned was that when the carbon content of the grid increases, they turn off the chargers. And as far as demand, actually, this is interesting. When they built their new facility, they have 40 employees. And he put charging stations at all of the parking spaces. And at the beginning of the year, there were 3 cars coming and plugging in. And at the end of the year, there were 32 cars coming and plugging in. So the opportunity of it being there changed quite a bit.
I do want to add that the pilot project is for up to 20 chargers, and they're paying the full installation costs and the maintenance costs for, I forget how many years after the install. So it's a good opportunity to move on.
Yeah, it'd be a great perk for the teachers at Annalee.
And I just want to chime in, since the transportation committee was mentioned a couple times. Just speaking for myself, I agree that this is a super important opportunity, and I'd be happy to collaborate however I can. So yeah.
Great. All right, I guess that's all from us, huh?
Dina?
Oh, I had a question. So would the Barlow be considered an employer theoretically, even though it's a bunch of individual stores, because there's a lot of people that go there to go to work besides?
Potentially, they're looking for daytime employees. So that there's certainly a mix there.
There's not as many big employers in Sebastopol, is there?
Yeah, I think part of the idea is that if employees can feel confident in their ability to get to work and plug in, they're more likely to actually buy an electric car.
And Lisa, how would this be sort of set up with existing employers?
Beyond the
a department that usually someone wants something from us, so they come to us and we say, well, you got to do this too.
Steve, do you want to take that one on, or Jared?
I was going to say, they're working that out, Carrie. Basically, the frustration that Jeff had was the tariffs incentivize all of us to charge at midnight when we have the highest carbon content in the electricity, instead of incentivizing us when we have the lowest carbon content. and we're exporting energy during the day. And sometimes we have to pay other locales to take the energy from us because we have so much solar.
Yeah, Sonoma Clean Power is working on a pretty good sized project with the county right now with at the county campus in Santa Rosa. So yeah, it's still a lot to learn about it.
Woody?
Yeah, I was just going to say the questions like what Dina was asking, typically in the thing that's coming up next week, there will be all kinds of information about eligibility and details around that in the program design. So all that information should be accessible. I don't know if the agenda is posted yet, probably not, but anyway, that should be in the packet.
Great. Alex?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, so just a note too, there's a potential possibility. Obviously, the utility pole charging is something that we're definitely looking at long term for the transportation team. And if there are locations in Sebastopol where there's employers, but there might be on-street parking, or there's not. If there's an opportunity where we could collaborate there, that might be a good way to utilize that charging platform or that idea, because the infrastructure is so easy to set up because you're pulling it off the existing power lines, or it's easier, I should say. So just a thought, but we can discuss more about it online. I just wanted to make a note of it real quick.
Great. Thanks, Alex. So I guess that's it from the energy group.
All right. Well, energy group got a lot of energy from the group, so that was good. Anyone? It's been a long day already. Anyone else? Alex?
Yeah, I'll jump in and share about the education and outreach group real quick, just to give some updates. So currently working on putting together what we're calling a climate framework engagement series. It's the best we could come up with, formerly known as maybe the Framework Book Club. But we're essentially, the idea is just to engage community members in climate action and develop a way to educate and engage them and find community and talking to their neighbors about, just climate stuff in general. So really just focusing on community education. We're targeting the end of January. We'll need some support, maybe a person from each working group, but we'll definitely talk more about it. Just want to plant the seed now. Let's see. So more to come on that. We just wanted to give ourselves plenty of time to be able to, advertise, and with the holidays coming up and stuff, we just felt like it was going to be too much to try to cram it in December. Give a quick art update. I believe we'll be putting in a display at the formerly People's Music in their window, maybe in the next week or so. So we'll keep you updated, or keep your eyes out for that. Let's see. Obviously, we're continuing the Sebastopol Times article. I'll be writing the November. I'll be at least drafting November, and the transportation team will be helping me, dial that in. Thank you, Lisa. Shout out to Lisa for a great article just to kick us off. And that's really the only updates we have now. We definitely have some ideas for 2023 and some goals and things like that, but we're just kind of holstering those and still brainstorming.
Great. Thank you so much. And it's really exciting to see this article series coming to life and getting out there.
Shout out to Dina for keeping that organized.
Yeah. Whoop, whoop. Go ahead, Dina.
Oh, so Carrie and Phoebe are helping to see if we can kind of double up use of a column written that goes to the Sebastopol Times. For example, the heat pump information Lisa provided would be really good to get out to more people. So Phoebe suggested having a little blurb in the Friday newsletter that goes out with the link to the whole article in the Sebastopol Times, just so we can try to educate more people or inform more people what we're up to. And then maybe talking about what could go on the website when the new website's finally done too. So there's more use out of each well-researched and written column.
Yay. More impact, not more work. I like it. All right. Anyone else from a working group that has anything that we haven't heard already before we turn this over to our work plan crew? Any members of the public want to address anything about the working group reports before we move on? All right, so I'm going to hand this over. I'm not sure who to. Is it Joshua? Is it Phoebe? Is it Carrie?
I can kick us off unless Joshua, you have anything. No. Okay. So I'll just start us off by going over the sort of plan for the work plan, which was in the staff report. So hopefully everyone got a chance to look at that. This is our sort of timeline for developing the work plan here at the October 26th CAC meeting, and later on we'll be going over those evaluation criteria and talking about those. Then the plan is to meet with all of the working groups and have them do an initial draft prioritization of the section that most relates to their working group. So thank you to the energy working group for going first. I've already met with them and that was really productive. So these are the, if I haven't already, I think I've emailed all the working groups, but if you weren't aware, these are the sort of proposed assignments for the sections and the pages that where they are in Appendix A of the framework. Still to be determined if any of the working groups would like to take on the city operations and leadership section. I don't know, finance, funding, you're the only working group that doesn't have one assigned. But if you have enough going on and don't want to take that on, that's totally fine. Just let me know where you're on that. And then I believe I have meetings scheduled with all the other working groups, except for I wanted to confirm with Sierra Waste whether their November 7th meeting would work, but Diana isn't here, so we'll check in on that. So after meeting with all the working groups and hearing your priorities from your section, I'll be bringing those together into one work plan. And then that's what we'll be discussing at the November 9th CAC meeting, which will be in person. It's going to be in the green room at the community center. So that's in the main building. It's a room off of the main hall. And it's going to be from 3 to 5:30, I believe. So try and get there early if you can so that we can get settled and get started. And the goal at that meeting will be to sort of narrow down from the list of all the working group priorities from their sections to get a cohesive list of ideally 6 big projects for the whole committee to focus on. And then after getting that input at the November 9th meeting, we'll take that back and develop a final work plan. Discuss that probably at the November 30th meeting, and then it'll need to go to council for approval before move towards implementing those items. So that is the sort of overall timeline. I did also want to ask if you know you can't make it to this November 9th meeting, we're trying to get a head count because we're going to have some refreshments. So if you know you can't make it, please send me an email or chat me in the Zoom chat today. Joshua?
Yeah, thanks, Phoebe. Just a couple of questions. Maybe these will be covered later. Firstly, the Planning Commission work plan that you sent out there was sort of a 2-year period or a 2-year framing. So I'm wondering, 2 years seems a bit ambitious for us. Are we thinking of this work plan as a year-long document, or part of the year. So that's sort of one question. The other is the sort of, you mentioned 6 big projects for everybody. I'm kind of wondering, what the rationale is about that number.
Yeah, so maybe I'll hand it over to Carrie now. She's going to talk a little more in detail about the work plan and go over that example of the Planning Commission. So I'll stop sharing my screen.
Sure, thank you, Joshua. And yeah, this is definitely kind of an interactive. We can change how some of these things are done. Really what this is
I think Woody had a question.
trying to, okay, I was going to answer Joshua's question first. Sorry. Trying to figure out how to prioritize the document. So the reason, the 6 top projects, there's no specific limit or number of projects. It is more about what capacity. So how many big, if there's 6 really small projects, then maybe it's 10 projects, the 4 big projects and 6 small ones. It really depends upon how easy or involved the projects that get prioritized are. So there's kind of a number, and it's generally capacity for you guys as well as staff in terms of juggling a number of things at once. So that's definitely something we will work out as usually when you're doing this kind of a thing, the priorities, and I think Phoebe found this with the group she worked with already. The priorities were pretty clear on what types of things you're doing. In terms of the time frame for it, the way we did the work plan, most of those top items were some were 1 year, some were 2 years, but they were definitely the more involved projects. And for long range projects, that is often the amount of time it takes to get them done. So there's no specific time limit on it either. If you look at the work plan, it actually kind of naturally fleshed out where there were some big projects, and those are the numbered ones. Not all of them were done at the same time. Some of them were scheduled for a little bit later, based on capacity or budget or whatever was going on. And then there's some other stuff that's, hey, this is what we need to do. There's some ongoing stuff that we're going to do, like the compost stuff or whatever, whether you want to put that on the work plan or not. And then there's some other stuff that you might want to put on kind of a secondary list, and just to keep track of, hey, we talked about this, people are interested in it, but it didn't come up as your 1 or 2 priority. There's no magic about it, Joshua. It's more just trying to help guide the question of, well, what do you guys do next? Woody?
Thanks. Yeah, sorry, just sort of a mundane question here. Phoebe, you mentioned that you've scheduled with all of the working groups, and just wondering, I don't seem to have transportation in my calendar. So when is that?
So I scheduled it with Alex. I thought you were in the loop, but I can send that meeting invite to you again. It's on November 1st.
November 1st.
I believe at noon.
Oh, okay. I do. I'm sorry. Yeah, I've got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So, and I kind of like the question and answer format about the work plan stuff. So, it sounds like you guys have looked at it. Rather than my presenting, are there other questions about the work plan, about how the Planning Commission put it together, how this group might put it together? All right. Excellent. Oh, sorry, Joshua, go ahead.
I just want to say that I'm happy to hear whatever presentation you have, and I'm sort of interested in what the expectations are from the city end about what the work plan represents for you all, and why and how it helps you all to frame these things in the longer term.
Got it. Okay. So there's I can talk a little bit more about the development, but I think, Joshua, that's a really good question. Like, how are we going to use this? So there's a few things that this will end up tying into. One of the key parts of this is, just everyone being on the same page as in terms of these are the top things. These are the things we're going to work on for the next couple of years. It doesn't mean that those are set in stone. Council, either this council or the new council, or something could come up politically where the council says, hey, we really need the Climate Action Committee to look at this. And so those other priorities, or there's an opportunity that comes about that some of the grants and other things, that if there's a perfect project and there's something not on, lower down on the work plan, but all of a sudden there's a grant available for it, there is a certain aspect of opportunity as a criteria. I know Phoebe's going to lead you through potential criteria for how to organize things in the back end. But I think in terms of working within government, I know there have been some frustrations within this group about the amount of times it takes and whether or not there's resources, how to go about it with council. I found that this was a really good tool with the Planning Commission, and I see it for the CAC as well, of communicating to council, hey, here's what we as a committee think is a priority out of this a document that we put together with Phoebe, and that the city has reviewed and adopted, the council has reviewed and adopted. Here's the things in it that we see as priorities worth working on first. And then council can, there will be some understanding of the cost of those and the initiatives, and some of them have political costs as well for council, just to be clear about it. And so to have council, it will go to council for discussion with them and approval by them. And so that makes sure that everyone's on the same page. You're not going out and, I've seen planning commissions before go out on a limb and say, or develop something, and then it gets to council and council's like, this isn't what we wanted at all. And that's part of my job, is to make sure that those conversations are happening. In the meantime, the work plan is a really good tool for that. The other thing is, because this will identify and allow, without kind of my or Steve Brown or others sitting down and costing out exactly what we think each would of the initiatives, there's like 50 or something, what they might cost in terms of staff time and or consultant costs. What are the ones that I can tell you dollar signs, what's going to be a big chunk of time and money and what's not. Just from my experience on it. And I shared some of this with Phoebe this morning when I was talking with her. But it'll help you in the budget next year for me to be able to identify what do we need budget for and requests. As we heard last year, and Steve Pierce and Lisa, I think you attended some of those budget subcommittee meetings. There's a desire to be really specific about what we're doing when we ask for dollars. And so this will also help with that. And then, it also kind of helps you stay disciplined. I think I call it discipline, maybe. It's always fun to go look at a new initiative, but you got to get your work. This is what we are committing to, and we're serious about it. We're going to, get through these things. Zena.
Yeah, I have two comments about the criteria. The first one is that I feel that we should make more explicit that we're interested in public-private working together. So not just funding through grants, but also funding through local.
Zena, we're going to go through the criteria in just a minute. I'm going to present them all first. So maybe hold it for then, unless you have a different comment.
No, I thought that was already being discussed. But,
yeah, sorry, I'll get to that in a minute, but are there other questions for Carrie about the work plan?
Great. So it's a process. It's flexible. If something comes up, or as we're working through things, if you have questions, just let myself or Phoebe know. And Phoebe, I've had some conversations with her already about this, knowing that she's never been through it either. But I think we'll work through it together. It's actually we will have some prioritization. I think it's fun, but my background is in community participation. So you sort of get you get to express yourself personally on what your personal interests and priorities are. It's like a democracy in some ways, where you get a vote, you don't necessarily get your way, because there are realistic natures to some of this, and that Jerry can probably attest to that from the planning commission work plan. There's some stuff that individual council members, that's their flag or whatever, but it doesn't mean that goes into the work plan if it's not an overall city priority. So that's good to keep in mind as we're doing this. But if there aren't any other questions, I think I'll turn it back over to Phoebe to talk about she's drafted some criteria usually before looking at what you're going to be evaluating. It's super helpful to figure out what your real criteria are beforehand, so you don't kind of have that bias of stuff. Jerry.
Just because you mentioned my name, Joshua, for me, part of the work plan is this. It primes staff for, we're going to be interested in this, and so you better learn a little bit about this before we sit down and start talking about it. And it gives them a sequence of when to do the study work, whatever else, and be ready for it. Especially in the planning commission, that was always the case. Here, it's a little bit lighter, but still, that's basically what the format is for.
Yeah, that's a great comment, Jerry. It helps us know. We're not experts on everything, and frankly, John and I are still learning about VMT from a kind of feels like a beginner's vantage point of how do we deal with it. And I keep asking the question there's mitigations for VMT that what can we do locally? We don't have transit. How can we? People like to do mitigation banks just like they do with environmental stuff, but that means you're sending your money somewhere else instead of having a local impact. And I keep saying Sebastopol wants to be able to actually reduce VMT locally, not just pay a fee for it. So what can we do? But it's taken a lot of research, and we still haven't started that project with the Planning Commission.
All right, so I'll jump into the criteria. So this was all in the packet. These are just some potential criteria that we could consider in prioritizing the actions. And one of the goals today is to identify ones that are missing, like Zaino was bringing up. So we'll have time for that to go over what your thoughts are on these, but then also ideally to narrow them down a little bit, because looking at every single one of these for every action in the framework is going to be a lot. So identifying which ones are the most important, and then maybe just keeping the other ones in mind as you're going through them with your working groups. So we have the two sort of main categories here, impact of the action and then feasibility. So on the impact side, looking at the greenhouse gas reduction potential, it's definitely not going to be possible to calculate that exactly, but just having a sort of estimate thought about how significant that is. Also, some of them may be more on the adaptation side. And then there's a whole bunch of other co-benefits that we might consider. Equity, this group has an equity matrix that can be used to evaluate that. Community health and wellness, so air quality, improved safety, mobility, and potential economic benefits. Some of the groups have also expressed interest in this idea of being a leader, and Sebastopol has demonstrated that. So I'm considering whether that's a factor we want to evaluate these items with as well. And then open to hearing other potential impacts we might want to think about. Joshua, did you want to jump in now or at the end?
Yeah, just on that impact front, given that part of our mandate is about getting the word out and education and getting more people on board, I think some sense of how many people are reached, are contacted, are educated, are interested by a given project. Some are a little more internal and some are a little more external. And so just that sense of how many members of the public are engaged or some tracking that I think will be helpful.
Okay, so I think you're maybe thinking more along the lines of tracking the impact of our sort of climate work more generally, or are you saying for each specific item? because not all of the items are going to involve sort of community outreach. There's the community section, which is more focused on that. But are you saying each item should also have that sort of aspect to it?
Maybe my comment might not be falling in the proper section. I'll own that up front. I was just essentially thinking of that question of how many people is a given gesture likely to reach? What's the audience that is going to be impacted by a certain gesture? To me, that's just part of, I think of it as a co-benefit in a way, but if it's covered in another section, that's totally fine too.
Okay, I see. No, I understand what you're saying. So like, yeah, sort of the reach of the action. That makes sense. Jerry?
Mine's comparable to Joshua's. It's if you look at the ones that we discussed with you from the energy team, in all of those, I think all of those, there's a component that, as Zeno is pointing out, leverages outside resources. And so I think that's actually one of the impacts we want to look at when we're looking at our items we'll work on, how well we can leverage outside resources. Sebastopol has very little resource. So most of what we want to accomplish requires us to find a way to leverage outside resources.
Okay, I was seeing that more down in the feasibility section, which we haven't got to yet, but I can see how that would be a benefit as well in building those partnerships.
Yeah, I see it as an impact, because basically if we do something and it prompts others to do something, the impact is larger. Okay.
Okay, I see. Yeah, thank you. Kenna?
Just to build off Joshua's comment, I mean, I think he was maybe focused more on like how many direct beneficiaries of a particular program or project in terms of reach, but I do think there is a co-benefit of public education that could, obviously there's direct outreach education projects, but there's other projects that would have public awareness as a co-benefit or public education as a co-benefit. So I do think there is a place for that in the co-benefits of education being a piece that comes along with some other things.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's a good point. Thanks for elaborating on that. Zeno?
Yeah, going back to what Josh and Gary said, I think it's important to also look at the scalability of the proposal. Is this something that other people can take over? Reduction potential is a global impact, and Sebastopol has just a tiny piece of the emissions of the world. This is a worldwide problem. So if you want to have impact, you also have to look at, can this project we have inspire others outside our community? Can it be copied, or can we help other people like sister cities that we have all over the world? Can we inspire other communities taking similar actions? I feel that's an important part of the impact, because of, although adaptation is a local effect of what we're doing, the reduction is really a global effect. And we're such a small part of the problem that we have to really take serious the impact that we can have in enthusiasm in the world around these issues.
Thank you, Zeno. Lisa?
Yeah, I think that what I'm hearing is maybe that demonstrating leadership or innovation bullet point, maybe that could be tweaked a bit to say something more like scalability, some of the things that were mentioned, to how can it spread?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think sort of rephrasing that to more reflect Zeno's comments makes sense. All right, so moving on to the sort of feasibility half, these are looking at potential barriers to the action. So of course there's the cost of the project, both on the implementation, and then if there's any annual costs. Some projects might have cost to the public. So like Steve Brown was talking about, being worried about reach codes increasing the cost of building. That might be an example there. Funding availability could sort of mitigate some of that cost if there's a grant that's available, with grants also needing to consider how fundable the project is, how competitive the project would be for that grant. And then the time frame, sort of the overall time frame of the project, and then if there's any sort of upcoming opportunities and deadlines. So, for example, grant deadlines coming up might be a reason to push a project forward. And there are a couple upcoming grants related to adaptation. There's some adaptation planning grants that are going to become available at the state level in the next couple of months, and then another one for community resilience centers that will be opening in spring 2023. And then Steve Pierce was mentioning earlier about the Sonoma Clean Power pilot program. So that's another example of an opportunity that's, happening now, and we need to act if we want to take advantage of it. And then implementation resources and effort, how much city time, city staff is going to need to be involved in the project, whether you all CAC members have the capacity to support it or not. Also, I think this was, Jerry was mentioning this earlier, but in a different sense, thinking about the coordination that's needed and how much effort might be involved in that, whether the city has, direct control over something, or if it's needing to work with the school district or Sonoma County to get a project completed. And then also compatibility with existing city policies. The framework does identify where actions relate to goals in the general plan. And I'll be sending out an updated spreadsheet to all the working groups that identifies more specifically if there's an action in the general plan that is related to the action in the framework. And that can help because those actions have been CEQA reviewed and it's already in the city policy. So that can make it easier to move forward with. And then also if there's any existing programs that can incorporate the new action. So like building code inspections are already being done, that is incorporated into existing city process. And then down at the bottom here, these last three legal considerations, how much time CEQA might take, whether the city has the legal powers to implement. That's come up with the funding working group. The political social category is sort of, if the item is likely to be controversial or not. And then if there's any sort of practical barriers, like if the technology is not quite available yet, like vehicle to grid integration is maybe something that is still pretty challenging to implement, or if if it just doesn't apply to Sebastopol, might be something in that category as well. So are there any questions or additions to this section of the criteria? Are there any of these that people feel really strongly about emphasizing or not considering?
That looks great. All right, so I think my next step is going to be working on consolidating these a little bit, and you all have this list as a reference, but as far as going through each of the actions in the framework, it's going to be challenging to evaluate all of these. So I might try and group them together. Carrie.
Yeah, I just had a question because I saw the comments about the leadership and the comment that was just posted in the chat on that as well by Jerry. One question, do you see the city as, should we be a leader on the leading edge or the bleeding edge? If you know what I mean.
Say more.
Is that a question for me?
No, it's actually for the group. What is the priority? Is that we're like the first to do something, or is it that we're out there and we're one of the first to do? And I just go ahead and, oh, sorry, I'm supposed to be facilitating when I do this. This is how we do. I'm used to the planning commission. People just, someone else facilitates for me, calling on people. Kenna?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really has to be project specific. Like we have to do the right things for Sonoma, for Sebastopol. And some of those might have a leadership co-benefit and some of them may not. And I think that I personally think that Phoebe put it in the right category of like co-benefits of, this is a co-benefit of a project that might be right for our city, as opposed to this is our goal in and of itself.
Thanks. Lisa?
Yeah, I agree with that. And Phoebe, I think that the list looks great. Yeah, I think that bleeding or leading, that's a tough one. I think we're a small city with not a lot of resources. And I just read in the paper this morning that the Sebastopol was the first city to, I see Sarah nodding there, to put in place the parking ordinance with the RV parking, and now there's a lawsuit about it. And the first people to do a lot of things, the first cities often do get sued. So anyway, that's just another consideration. But hopefully we can do a little bleeding and some leading.
Right, those are both very thoughtful answers. And yes, I was kind of thinking about the Windsor was sued over the REACH code, and so was Santa Rosa. Part of it's just a risk assessment, and having it be a case-by-case basis certainly makes sense. The gas station ban, I know Petaluma did much more analysis on the CEQA. I didn't think the CEQA was going to be an issue for our town at all. I mean, mostly that was, are people going to be driving around trying to find a gas station? It's like, our town's so small, there's 3 gas stations, it's not going to be a problem. And so I tried to do some of that assessment for both you guys and council, obviously, but we do live in a litigious society, so. And it's not even just about litigation, it is about, do you end up buying beta? Or should I say, buying something that doesn't actually get you anywhere, and if you had just waited that year, whatever, you would have known VHS was the way to go. I know I'm completely dating myself, but there you go. Kenna.
Yeah, I'll back that up. I've been an early adopter of like every green technology, and often I am not as pleased with my purchase as the person who did it 2 years later.
Any more thoughts on
back to Phoebe.
Any more thoughts on the criteria or the work plan? Any questions? All right, so I will be sending out that updated spreadsheet to all the working groups, and that you all can use to jot down your notes to help prioritize, or not, totally optional, you don't have to use it. And then I have meetings with most of the working groups next week, so we can go over your thoughts and any questions you might have had while you were thinking about those actions. Let's see, I think also wanted to check in on if anyone has any food preferences or suggestions for the November 9th working group meeting. Feel free to share those now or to send me an email later. I'll be working on that. Joshua.
Yeah, Phoebe, if I could just chime in a little bit on that subject. So folks, we should have some snacks and drinks and take a break in the middle there somewhere. The meeting is a little bit longer than usual, and so just being mindful of that. That said, the intent was that we would be done kind of before dinner time, so not necessarily having a full meal, just sort of some filler stuff. But on that front, particularly if anybody has, dietary concerns or restrictions, or, things that you really would like to see there or really couldn't abide, in case of allergies, for instance, or something like that, please be forthcoming with that information. You can feel free to email it to me after this meeting, or if there's anything that we should know about here, by all means, hold forth on the subject. And I think that's about it. Oh, I should say we have a little bit of a budget for this from our slush fund, maybe on the order of $50 or so, I think we could say. If we wanted to get more involved for whatever reason, we could consider taking up a collection amongst ourselves. But again, the idea is just for some basic nourishment and blood sugar to keep the meeting rolling, not so much as having a party. So, back.
Kenna?
This is not a snack related question, but I'm not familiar with the green room. And I'm just wondering what kind of how we can optimize our COVID safety and doing an in-person meeting, and whether there will be any way for people, if say someone's not, has a runny nose that morning or a sore throat, but still would like to participate, is there a way for people to dial in? Or is it more of a if you have a test before you go, or just mask friendly space? Do we have ventilation? Just those questions from your California Department of Public Health COVID-19 task force member.
Thank you, Kenna. Phoebe, I've not been in that particular room. Are there doors to the outside that can be opened for the green room? Okay.
So I'm looking at the floor plan right now.
And Councilmember Gurney's nodding yes. I suspect she's been in the green room before.
I've been in the green room. It's a big room. It has a very high ceiling, so there's a lot of cubic space. I believe the windows to that room open, and there is a door.
Great, perfect. And then I don't have any problem suggesting that it's that folks wear masks if they can. This is one of our first in-person meetings, and I know it's my first in-person meeting that is indoors. That isn't just with my staff, who I can, deal with on a very small basis.
Yeah.
Those and yes, I think certainly if you, just like when you go to the doctor's office, they ask if you've had any COVID symptoms or not. I would hope that folks would be respectful on that.
Yeah, and so the green room is in the main building of the community center, and it's right off of the main hall. Does that help? I've only been there once, so I don't know if that's a useful direction. Okay.
It has an exterior door that faces towards the Laguna too.
We can try and set up a sign and try and make it a little more visible. I have the Climate Action Committee sign over here.
If you're able to pull up and share the plan, the floor plan for it, that might help people too.
Oh, sure, I have it. So this is the main hall. This is the green room. So that's where it is. And I'm still waiting to hear back from them on whether there is Wi-Fi available. So I will send out an email if we are able to get onto the Wi-Fi, if people want to bring their own computers. Otherwise, we are planning on printing out some copies of the appendix and having materials for people to take notes on and sort of help with the prioritization.
Great, thank you. Is that it for you guys? Joshua, Phoebe, and Carrie regarding work plan preparation? Awesome. Yep. We might actually leave early today. That would be like the first time ever, right? So any members of the public want to comment on this before we move on? All right. So we will do chair reports. Joshua, did you have anything that you wanted to talk about today? Great. So Joshua reminded me that I should share the information about what was presented at City Council. I'm always like, people come if they want to. But I think I told everyone that, and I did just throw the presentation into the packet. It's not one of my more interesting presentations, but I will try to include my presentations in packets in the future because some of them are nice. I did one that was like a lot of pictures of Sebastopol's downtown, and that one was fun. But this one was really very focused on the potential incoming council members, and a follow-up to our last council report was like right after the adoption of the framework. So it was like, hooray, we did this thing. And this one was a little bit more focused on highlighting, and Phoebe had done a lot of education of the council on leading up to the framework of the public engagement process, but all of our potential council members were present at this last meeting, as they tend to be in election season. And so wanted them to understand all the council that will be in place moving forward, whoever it is, to really understand the extent of the public engagement process. So the theme of the presentation was "The People Have Spoken," and just trying to frame our work as work that is springing from the will of the people of Sebastopol, not from a bunch of wonky climate people who are just over in our corner doing our thing. So hopefully I conveyed a little bit of that. It wasn't a very long presentation. I did try to encourage the attendees at the meeting to understand like how the framework is built and why the stuff that's in the appendix is in the appendix, and how that stuff got in there, and let them know we would be doing our work plan meeting. And then of course, always ended with a celebration of our ongoing and increasingly successful compost giveaways, because that is something that people have spoken and said that they want. Debbie, go ahead.
Sorry, I just had a quick question for you, because there's so many rumors flying around town about this election. We could do a whole 5 hours on that. One of the things that I've heard is that depending on who the new council members are, there is a potential that the Climate Action Committee could be not moving forward, that there's a constituent that isn't in favor of funding or having that. I mean, I just don't know if it's true or not. So since you brought this up, I thought I would, that, and I guess the RV camp in town. So do you know if any of that is true, or has anybody, like Carrie, have you heard anything about that?
So I would probably advise that we not discuss the election in this group. We have no idea who the future council will be, nor what their decisions will be. I haven't seen anyone who has a platform that says that they're going to shut things down or do the specific things that I'm aware of that would impact this committee. But obviously that's
that's fine.
Future council.
So, Debbie, what I can say is that what I feel safe saying, and it feels appropriate to say, is that there's a lot of public support for climate action, not just locally, but nationwide. If you look at, for instance, the information coming out of the Yale and George Mason University research about climate audience and what percentages of the public is interested in climate action, those are just going up steadily everywhere. And I would say, in my experience as a citizen of this town is ahead of the curve with those numbers. So I feel like it's safe to say that the people of Sebastopol wants climate action, and however a future council might want to, express that will of the people through a committee or not a committee, or choices that they make. Of course, that's beyond our control, but it definitely is something that people want.
That's a really good point. I think one of the reasons I was asking is because you brought that up, and the other was you had also sent an article a while ago that people are more receptive if you don't call it climate action, but you call it extreme weather. And so I was wondering if maybe, we want to look at adapting. Anyway, that was it. But thank you so much.
Lisa?
Yeah, I just think that unfortunately this season there's been a lot of rumors flying around, and I think we just all have to be very careful to be careful what we're believing and listening to. So, and I just also wanted to thank you, Kenna, for always doing such a great job on the City Council. I'm really happy that you do that.
Oh, thank you so much. And I will thank you. I really appreciate Joshua reminding me that not everybody's able to make it to those meetings, and that I should loop back with you guys about what was said. All right, that is all I have for chair reports. Do we have anyone who is burning to get something on the agenda for the meeting following the work plan meeting? So we're going to have our work plan will be the only agenda item on our November 9th. Is that the correct date meeting? And then we're going to have a 3-week break. Am I correct, Joshua? I'm not the queen of the November calendar, but I think we're going to be meeting the week after Thanksgiving. Is that correct? So anything that you are looking at that is kind of moving forward in the next few weeks, go ahead and reserve your spot on that 2nd November meeting agenda now. Phoebe, go ahead.
Yeah, so we'll be looking to bring the revised work plan back to the committee for the committee to consider recommending to council at that meeting.
Joshua?
Yeah, I'm just trying to be a little mindful of the timeline for getting the word out about any new seats on this committee, and just being a little proactive about recruitment. I know we've been mentioning that internally, but at some point we probably need to have announcements through the city website or something on that order. I don't know how soon we need to get those ducks in a row, but I would hope that the city would be helping us say that people should be applying to the Climate Action Committee for the next year's run.
Right, and we have done the announcements, but that's an excellent point to make sure we get that into the upcoming newsletters. I believe it's the end of November is the time frame for application. I think the one nuance this year, so Debbie Burns is our business representative right now. She is going to be transitioned to the Planning Commission representative, which opens up another seat for a business representative. So if you do know a local business owner, that also will have a seat available, along with the Climate Action Committee is a pretty loosely defined in terms of what's a climate organization or someone with a climate background. So definitely there's a few seats. One of those would be another youth member for sure, if there is that. And so youth and business are the two pretty defined, and then climate related groups, which is pretty open to people who are just interested in doing the good work.
And Carrie and Sarah, to clarify on the sort of city residence requirements, is it basically that people have to have a Sebastopol address, whether they're in the city limits or not? Is that kind of a standing requirement?
The way this particular committee is set up, it is within the 95472 zip code, actually, the way this was done. So it can include people who are out of the city limits as well as those who are in. And Sorry, I know you're looking at me because we just changed the planning commission to be the
I
school
know,
districts.
they're the 3 school districts. I'm going, I got the planning commission straight. Thanks for helping on this one, Mary. I
Yeah,
mean, Carrie.
yeah. Yep.
All right. And I'm going to be checking in with our current youth member to see if he wants to remain in his seat as well. And I believe Joshua is doing, hoping to set up some outreach to the local high school that I am trying to assist with by getting him some good contact information. Anything else for the agenda for the meeting following the work plan meeting? Any other projects that are moving forward that we might want to schedule time for? Lisa?
Maybe the electrification survey. Hopefully we'll be
Yeah.
at a point to take some more steps with that, but I'm not sure. So I'll let you know.
Okay, thank you. All right, and then after the work plan meeting, our agendas are going to be self-generating from the work plan. It's going to be so beautiful. Debbie?
We might have some additional stuff at our working group to add to that agenda. Same as Lisa, we can keep you posted, but we have things we're working on.
It's a long way away, but we will be needing to crank that agenda out like pre-Thanksgiving. And so we may need a little extra notice than the usual week ahead. I'm sure Carrie or Phoebe will let me know exactly when I need to get that agenda to them. All right, so Joshua, do you want to do a review of these sparse action items here?
Action items, get ready for the work plan. Everybody get ready for the work plan.
All right.
Review those appendix items. Pick someone you want to work on. Figure out how to justify it. Yeah.
Sounds good. I like it. Thank you all so much for your ongoing continued commitment. And we're going to give you a whole 8 minutes back in your day today.
Thank you.
I'm clapping for you guys, not the 8 minutes. You do
Thanks,
really
all.
well, you guys. Thank you.
Joshua, Phoebe, Carrie, do we need to discuss anything today? Do you want to turn off the recording?
Thank you. Hold on. And the YouTube live. Thank you.
Yeah,
hold
I'm
on,
just
hold on.
assuming that maybe.
Josh, can you hold on a second? Sorry.
Yeah.
She's got to turn off the live stream.
Yeah.
She doesn't want you to start talking about rumors.
Phoebe,
Do you need me to do it?
Yeah, I need you to do it since you're the host now.